everyone. I'm Noreen Purcell Dillman, the creator of the Healthy Peaceful podcast. In the About My Podcast section, I describe myself as former attorney, YouTuber, natural food chef, wellness guru. No, that's not a typo. It actually means precious one. If you haven't been following me, you may be wondering what this podcast of 4 years is all about. Well, this is a place where I interview individuals in order to explore topics pertaining to the meaning of health and well-being, personal and collective consciousness, and maximizing full human potential. In today's episode, prepare to embark on a transformative journey with me as I delve into the ancient system of healing known as Ayurveda. In this series titled My Ayurvedic Odyssey, I invite you to join me as I interview individuals who have undergone the rigorous study of Ayurveda at Maharishi International University. Each episode offers a glimpse into the personal and professional journeys of these individuals, exploring how Ayurveda found them and how they've integrated its timeless wisdom into their lives to enhance overall well-being. My guests share insights and anecdotes that offer a glimpse into the profound impact Ayurveda has had on their lives and the lives of their clients. But our exploration doesn't stop there. We also delve into the future of Ayurveda and the creative ways these individuals envision promoting its growth as a practical system of self-care. With its focus on eliminating the root causes of conditions and improving overall health, my guests offer innovative strategies for integrating Ayurveda into modern healthcare systems and society at large. Join me on this enlightening journey as we uncover the timeless wisdom of Ayurveda and its potential to revolutionize modern wellness. Whether you're a seasoned practitioner or new to the world of Ayurveda, this series promises to inspire, educate, and empower you on your own path to holistic health and well-being. And this afternoon, I have a wonderful guest, Kristen Burke. Good afternoon, Kristen. How are you today?
Good afternoon, and doing well, and thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's wonderful. We're continuing our series on students of Ayurveda, really sharing how you came to Ayurveda, the changes that you've made pertaining to Ayurveda, both in your personal life and professionally, and really where you're taking Ayurveda out into the world. So, Kristen, if you don't mind telling our viewers and listeners a little bit about your background.
Sure, absolutely. So, I'll give you a little background on the educational aspects. So, I have my Bachelor of Science in Micromolecular Biology, and I have my MBA from USC, and I am working on my Master's of Science in Ayurvedic Integrative Medicine at Maharishi International University. I'm actually in my last semester of coursework, and then
Congratulations.
thank you so much. And then next semester, I will be in the advanced clinicals, and then I'll be able to walk next June. So I'm excited about that.
Awesome.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
sorry. So
No, no, no. Go ahead.
my
Sure.
professional background is I worked in the field of forensic toxicology. I worked both in clinical world, workplace drug testing, and then transitioned into forensic toxicology in 2005. I started working at Sacramento County Crime Lab as a forensic toxicologist, became their quality assurance manager, so AKA bean counter, right, in compliance. And then
Mhm.
the last 5 years of my career, I worked as the director of a statewide forensic toxicology lab under the California Department of Justice. So I oversaw the forensic alcohol program, the forensic toxicology laboratory, and which serviced 46 out of the 58 counties in California.
Wow,
And
that's
yeah,
quite a high-powered position that you had. Um, how did you connect with Ayurveda? How did Ayurveda find you? Because you working, you said 25 years in forensics, and
yes,
at the height of
roughly.
your career, you were managing a statewide lab in
Yes,
California.
yes.
Wow, that's quite impressive. Um,
Thank
yeah, I
you.
mean, Ayurveda is very different from the kind of career you had. A little bit about how Ayurveda came into your life.
Yeah, great question. So first, just to explain what toxicology is, it's
Yes.
analyzing bodily fluids for the presence of drugs, alcohol, and poisons. So there is kind of a connection because you're looking at what are people taking with pharmaceuticals and possibly herbal extracts and how they can have effects on the human body. Not only just
Yeah,
for,
that's a great point. You're making that point with a science background that it's all, we know from studying Ayurveda that there's psychosocial and physiological, but you're studying it from the physiological component. So thank you for that clarification.
well, and one of the 8 branches of Ayurveda is toxicology and understanding the impact on external, aspects or poisons, toxicants, that type
Mhm.
of thing. Toxicants, I should say. So, I, as far as how did it get me to Ayurveda, I had fibromyalgia for 25 years. And basically every day I woke up, the first thing that I recognized was the pain. And essentially the last thing I felt was pain before I went to sleep. It was somewhat debilitating, not as much to me as many other folks that I've heard of because I have a pretty strong mind. I was raised mind over matter. And so many of the physicians around me, it took them a while to actually diagnose the fibromyalgia. They didn't know what it was because it was the early 90s when I started experiencing the symptomology. And I went through various tests. Ultimately, 3 doctors said, you will be bedridden by the time you're in your 50s. Like
Mhm.
essentially telling me what my path was going to consist of. I didn't, that didn't resonate at all. I
Yeah,
mean,
I
it was
mean,
shocking.
yeah, that must have been very tough for you to hear. And how did you, in terms of managing your fibromyalgia, I'm assuming this is bringing you to the path of Ayurveda.
Yes. So, long story short, none of what the medical physicians and or holistic care providers were suggesting were actually working. There was maybe a temporary fix, but I never took I did try one pharmaceutical medication, which made me just feel really uncomfortable. And after that, never tried them again. Took a lot of ibuprofen, lost my hearing in my right ear as a result of that, many milligrams of ibuprofen over 25 years. But when I had the hearing loss, I knew I had to make some changes. So basically, I started, this is way before what led to Ayurveda, but ultimately I was able to remove what I realized to be some of the foods I was eating and how it was causing digestive issues and how that related to the pain and also the
Mm.
stress. So I did be able to narrow it down to stressful people, situations, and aspects of my life that I knew I needed to make a change that I was resistant to changing. I identified those things in 2016, 17, and removed them in that time frame. And by 2018, things started to become easier, and I hired a personal trainer who was amazing how she worked with me, knowing that I had fibromyalgia. So it was diet, the exercise routine, which helped, and I started increasing sleep. And then I started doing other forms of meditation other than TM. I didn't know about TM during this time frame. I usually listen to a lot of different frequency music, sound therapy, and that actually ultimately is what helped me. And then it was 2018, I started reading about transcendental meditation. I was curious about it, but it just for some reason didn't completely resonated. So I was hesitant for some reason, I don't know why, on how to learn it. I think the first deterrent for me was, why do I have to pay for this? I don't understand. And
Yeah, there is a fee
so,
associated with learning
correct.
TM.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I revisited it a couple of times going into 2020 during COVID. I even met with someone and then I backed away from it again. So finally in 2021, it was September, I decided, you know what, I'm going to learn this. And
Okay.
I signed up for it and went and met the TM instructor.
Hmm.
And the entire time I was there thinking, why did I wait? Why did I wait to learn this? Just the experience of the learning that technique and
Yeah.
being in the presence of the instructor was really peaceful.
Mm.
And so then we did two follow-up sessions after that, and I really started, um, just jumping right in and learning all of the information through the app, and also trying to understand the actual scientific technology behind it,
Okay. Yeah. So you
not
were
just,
Maharishi was a physicist, so he came with a science background, and
yeah,
with your own science background, uh, you were some people really just focus on the benefits of TM and they're not too interested in what's the science behind this. But you decided to dig a little deeper and increase your knowledge in that regard of the actual technology and how it works, the neuroscience of the brain and its impact.
absolutely. And I saw there were some similarities between this form of meditation and some of the sound and frequency meditation that I was using. But
Sure.
this one it was easier in general. And
Yeah.
so as I was talking with my instructor, I mentioned how I was coming up with the things I noticed with my own healing journey, the different holistic providers I met. I realized there could be a very streamlined way to help get this information out to people, not just with meditation, but all of the different holistic options that people
Mhm.
had to help them heal. But I wasn't,
Mm.
at the time, I was journaling a lot and I didn't really know how this was going to unfold. I just had an idea and I wasn't sure what to do with it. And so I talked about the holistic avenue, and she said, I think you need to check into, you're really into the science, you have a scientific background. You need to check into the physiology PhD program at Maharishi International University. And so I was actually looking at that program to apply, but you needed to have your master's in science first. So I thought, darn, I wanted to cut corners and get straight to that.
Right. You want to
And
go straight to the gold.
exactly. And so I checked into the Maharishi Ayurvedic Integrative Medicine program and read about it. And I thought, what the heck?
The-
Maybe I'll
That's
just,
the master's program.
yes, that's correct. That's the one I'm
Right.
currently in. And I thought, what the heck? Maybe I should just enroll. And that way I can educate myself as to some of how these providers are helping people. I knew nothing about
Mm.
Ayurveda whatsoever. I thought, well, I like
Wow.
the TM and the school requires the
Mhm.
TM and the
Sure.
tuition
You
is,
already you already were experiencing personal benefits from the TM, so
yeah.
uh, you were you were obviously going to be more open-minded to learning more. So that's really wonderful. Um, would you say that you had a pivotal experience in your decision to study Ayurveda or an aha moment, or was it just, you know what, I'm not quite there for the PhD, so let's just go all in on Ayurveda, even though I don't really know what it is. I'm a science person, and the school is and the program is very science based, and it's a technology, and so, or was there something else,
It was
a
something
pivotal moment?
else. It
Yeah.
wasn't a pivotal moment until after I was in the program and was sitting in one of the classes.
Okay.
So I'm a very curious person. I love education. If I could just be a professional college student and do research, I think I would be the happiest, but we do have
Right.
to work.
Mm-hmm.
So, and integrating these things into work is what I ultimately wanted to do. And that's what I figured out before I actually started the Maharishi Ayurvedic program. Is I had a vision of what I wanted to do with a startup, and I already started journaling about this and getting and I was in my Master's of Science in actually my MBA at USC. I was just wrapping that up in 2021, right before I started TM. So I already had an idea of what I wanted to work on. There was two technologies, and one of them is now sitting on the shelf, and I wanted to focus in on this health tech startup, which hopefully will launch in the next month or so. And
Wow. Wow. Do you want to
yeah,
talk a little bit about more about that? We
I
can we can
yeah, I
we can
think we
go on
can
a
go
side to that.
we
Sure.
can go we can go back to that if you don't mind. I'll
Yeah,
address the why I got into the MAV program.
sure.
So I got into the program mostly to educate myself as to how these holistic practitioners help people, because I would be dealing with holistic practitioners of all different forms, and I wanted to understand how legit was this? Does it work? What is the process? And how did I not never hear of this? That's really where I was coming from.
Specifically Ayurveda.
Correct.
Yeah, Maharishi.
Yes.
Right.
I
Okay.
knew nothing
But
about it.
but it could also relate to kind of the bigger picture of holistic,
Yes,
complementary and alternative medicine. Okay, great.
exactly. So even during the week of we had when we first started the program, we had an online like kind of an onboarding for the program. And it was just, as I was sitting there, I thought, I don't know. I don't know if this is, maybe I'll just finish the semester out. I don't know if this is for me. Nothing was resonating like yet.
Yeah.
Now, I was
Mhm.
sitting in one of the lectures. I don't remember exactly which one it was in the first semester. And then that's when I had the aha moment. As we were
Mhm.
learning about fibromyalgia and the use of Ayurveda, it was starting to validate. Now, there's been a process with this. It was starting to validate everything that I did to heal myself. Now, just to be clear, 4 years ago, I completely removed it, whether you want to call it curing. I don't even know if that's really a word, or removed it, obliterated it. It's gone completely, right? Out of my
Well, in
life.
Ayurveda, they would say you've removed the cause.
Removed a cause, right? And, everyone has their different perspective as to what word to use. So I just kind of use all of them, whatever they are.
Sure. Sure.
And, but at the end of the day, it validated what I already knew, which I felt like I accidentally came across a way to heal myself, right? That was the process.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I was thinking to myself, it's so rare. Even with people within the MAV program, some of the veggies and professors, as we were discussing in some of the lectures, they had mentioned that some of the most difficult clients are people with fibromyalgia, because it's hard to figure out how to remove the causative factors, right?
It's difficult to cure, in other words.
Correct, according to
Right.
Western medicine. Like, actually,
Mhm.
Western medicine says it's not curable, which is
Right.
not right. That is false. I will say
Mm.
it's false.
Hmm.
But when people use those terms, and this is my opinion, okay, based on experience, when people say there is no cure to something, now they're projecting that reality on someone who has that there is no way out. It
That's so true.
removes
Yeah.
it removes the ability for the unbounded, like we learn with TM, the unbounded, the unlimited opportunities that can come our way. And so this
Right.
is
The unlimited
how,
unlimited potential and the
yeah,
potentiality for um for becoming whole, essentially.
because we are the ones that get to decide that
Mm.
with our own connection to the divine. We are the ones
Yeah.
that get to decide that. And when other people project onto us what our path will consist of, it can
Well,
limit the mind.
yeah, it alters our reality and our
Yes.
perception of reality. It changes our
Yeah.
reality. And even though what they're saying may have some data or, be scientifically driven, um, it's probably not the best approach in communication when, um, just trying to promote health and wholeness.
The scientifically driven numbers are the linear mind.
Yeah.
The
Hmm.
connection to self and the unbounded and the
Right.
consciousness level is the outside of the box creative opportunities for anything to come our way and releasing
Sure.
control.
Sure. Well, that paradigm isn't necessarily prevalent in Western medicine, but
Yeah.
I think there's starting to be, well, just with the growth of complementary and alternative modalities, uh, there's a realization that it's not totally healing is not totally linear.
So then that brings to me to a quote that I often refer to when it comes to Western medicine.
Mm.
How's it working for you so far? By Dr. Phil. It isn't. More people today are more sick. We have more illnesses than ever before. We have more
I
PTSD
love the way you
stress.
I love the way you said that. It just that is priceless right there. And
But
just the way
it's
that you expressed it.
but it's true if we think about it. Why are we continuing down a path that isn't working for us?
I know, I know. Well, um,
And I'm not saying that Western
there's
medicine is
there's a
bad.
yeah, yeah, exactly,
I'm just
exactly.
saying the approach that we
Right.
continue to get ourselves stuck in by relying on these quote unquote numbers, which we all know, data can be
Yeah.
manipulated. We can take
Hmm.
any numbers and we can make them look beneficial in whatever way that we want. So I think
Yeah. Yeah.
we have to look at data through the lens of objectivity versus subjectivity, number one,
Yeah. No,
as a
that's a great point.
scientist.
Well, I
Number
think
two,
that, instead of using the word manipulation, I'm not a scientist, but perhaps using the word interpretation. It can be interpreted a number of different ways.
I'm a scientist, and I will say that some people that in the scientific community do manipulate numbers.
Okay. All right. Yeah. So it's not totally off base. Yeah.
Right.
Uh,
And I'm
Yeah.
not saying any particular scientist in any specific field. I'm just
Mm,
indicating that it's a possibility, right?
of course.
And
Absolutely. Yeah.
so the reason I say that is I think that people put so much of their decisions based on science. And I think
Yeah.
science, in fact, in the last 5 years, actually specifically around COVID, we kept hearing the term trust the science. And I'm like, I'm a scientist. And the way I was raised as a scientist in school, beyond that, was to always question the science because it's dynamic. It's always
Right.
changing. Our data is always
Yeah.
changing. This is the point I'm
Hmm.
trying to make in regards to data. Data is always changing because our research changes because the group of people who are studied changes, right? So I think that we have to keep an open mind as to what that means and how it's connected to our decisions. If anyone ever says,
And not
trust
just
this,
accepted at face value, essentially, is what you're indicating.
what I'm actually indicating is if anyone ever says, trust the science and forces people to think only one way in a subjective way, that's when I would run for the hills.
Right. Okay. That's totally
True,
understandable.
true scientist is going to push back not only on their own work, but they're going to invite people of differing opinions that don't agree with them to look at their work. And if they're so defensive that they can't allow that, then that is not science. Science is always questioning, is this really true? Right? We know
Right.
that
So that
truth,
so I think what I'm
reality,
hearing is the best science is really there's a degree of open-mindedness and a
yes.
willingness to consider other viewpoints.
A true
And to
scientist, a true scientist is open to the linear world and the
yeah,
outside of the box. Most
right.
scientists, if they're too far in the linear world, they're going to miss half of the story. People
Yeah, there
too much, people too
it's
much on
just
the
the
People too much on the creative outside of the box side are going to miss the other side of the story. That is why it's
Yeah.
important to merge the two worlds together. And I feel like Maharishi Ayurveda is a great example of bringing those two worlds together.
Oh, awesome. Well, the 200% of life, the inner and the outer,
Exactly.
which is akin to what you just described.
Right.
Um, well, thank you for sharing one of your pivotal moments in the program that, when the dots were connecting about your approach to um, alleviating the symptoms of fibromyalgia and what Maharishi Ayurveda had to say about fibromyalgia. I know when you're in an academic program, and boy, you really have embraced academics in the last 2 years, going back to school and doing your MBA, and now you're doing the business part, the science part, alternative medicine part. Um, in the world of in studying Ayurveda, typically there's going to be challenges when you undergo, rigorous study. Just any academic program. What was the most challenging for you, and how did you sustain, inspire yourself, continue to just keep moving forward?
Just with academics in general?
Just like particularly in your experience with studying Ayurveda, we're very
Okay.
inspired. We want to study
Right.
Ayurveda. And then, we get into the day to day of, oh, I've got to do
Mhm.
XYZ, I got to do weekly warm up, I have to,
Mm.
and how did you continue to inspire yourself and sustain yourself throughout an academic program like this?
I think to answer that question best is to reflect back on my early academic career.
Mhm.
Um, I wish I would have been able to apply myself and do better. First I was a biochemistry major at Cal Poly San Luis Obispo and a dance minor, and then decided I wanted to be a forensic scientist. So I switched schools to biochem and forensic science at Sacramento State. Met my ex-husband, and then we moved to Portland, Oregon. And so I ultimately ended up transferring into the micromolecular biology program, and it wasn't easy. It was
No,
pretty
no,
rigorous.
that's
And
yeah.
I had two young kids, two young children, was married, which was very challenging, and I also had to work. So
Mhm.
those challenges, which I think gave me tools in the toolbox for later on with being able to manage multiple things, were really beneficial, but my grades were not as high as they wanted them to be. And so I thought, if later on in life, once my children are born and they're through college, I'd love to go back to school and show that I have the ability to do that, right? To achieve that at a higher
Sure.
level.
So as a
And
personal goal for
it was a personal goal. And once my youngest graduated from college, I went to USC, which is a pretty rigorous MBA
you.
program.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's I think it's 20 months. So we are learning, it's like a 3-year program kind of shoved into 18 to 20 months. It was very quick moving, and I'm very proud of myself that I was able to do that and work as the
Absolutely.
director of a statewide lab, and
Hmm.
in which were long hours with that. And then, but the huge contrast with Maharishi is that we meditate before class. We focus in on balancing our internal energy and being able to access our internal intelligence that much faster. There's not just the academic information that we learn about, but it's more of a wholeness approach, a consciousness-based approach. We don't, our program's 3 years, which it could have easily been a year and a half, but I think stretching it out, it allows someone who's in a professional world to be able to balance a full-time job and also go to school and maintain their grades without losing their minds. Um, because if you think
That's a very
about
good
it,
point. It's a very good
yeah,
point.
because
Yeah.
it actually is not beneficial if you're always in that fight or flight mode, hair on fire kind of thing
Right,
where your
right.
energy's off balance. It's going to affect your ability to focus and
Yeah.
retain information. And so for me, this program has been life-changing. It's not just the educational information with that will benefit me with my career and or my startup, but also personally, it changed my life in ways that I can't put into words. And the
Yeah,
people
well,
I've met,
that's a great comment because I want to talk about how it's done that. Before I do that, I want to just follow up on something that you just said about, the program's very part-time, 3 years. And with somebody like you with your ability to handle academics and rigorous programs, you could probably have accelerated that no problem. Um, but this thought just popped in my mind. It takes, however, it takes time. One of the benefits I think of having it is 3 years. It takes time for us to develop in consciousness.
yes,
And when you're in the program for 3 years, you now you're now evolving. You have the opportunity to stay connected over that period of time as you evolve in consciousness,
exactly.
and as your awareness broadens and expands. So I'm not saying that was intentional, but it's just something that I think that is definitely a benefit that you don't see that initially as being a benefit because you don't necessarily understand what evolving in consciousness means at that point. Does that make sense to you?
It makes absolute sense. And I didn't really even understand what consciousness meant. Like I heard the word and I
Exactly.
had an idea of what it meant.
Sure.
Even after we were studying, started to study that,
Right.
reading
Right.
it in context with books, I still would question, do I really know what this means?
Well, that's the
You
beauty
know?
of it. It's
Yeah.
experiential, and as you grow in the knowledge, you begin to deepen your understanding. So but you're
Mhm.
having the experience.
Yeah.
So you talked about that this program was very transformative for you on a personal level. Do you want to talk about some of the changes in your own life from a personal perspective, health or otherwise?
Yeah, absolutely. Because so going back to the fibromyalgia, I was able to eliminate that. However, I still recognize that even though I had some tools to deal with stress, I didn't know why certain foods were affecting me the way that they were. I knew processed foods weren't good, but I didn't know the mechanism. And going through this
Hmm.
program, one of our professors showed us a study that's, for example, and I don't remember the name of the study right off the top of my head, where they looked at people who consumed processed foods. And in essence, if people continue to eat processed foods every day, they would essentially gain a pound a month. This is roughly,
Mm.
right? This is, just not exact, but it's roughly. And then when they removed processed foods out of their diet, they reduced their weight by a pound a month. That's huge. And I
Yeah.
had an aha moment with that. And then I started studying the actual scientific mechanism in the physiology. We were learning a lot of how it affected the doshas, but in some of the physiology. But I wanted to go deeper into the pharmaceuticals, so I developed a pharmaceuticals and processed foods are kind of one and the same if you think about it. It's the chemicals that are
Well,
involved,
there's obviously it's got to, they both have to be digested, and
and they
so they're impacting our physiology,
yeah, well, and the one area that it seems to
and they're not
impact it,
natural.
the one area that it seems to impact the most, right, is having an interference on our ability to absorb nutrients. So affecting the agni, right, our digestive fire
Hmm.
in one
Hmm.
way or another. This is
Yeah.
just a very gross statement that I'm making, right? So the
Yeah.
specifics are
Right.
going to depend. But
Sure.
ultimately, if you're not absorbing nutrients, then your body's going to start craving things that aren't good for you, and or you're going to go down a path of what we call the mistake of the intellect, or the other
Yeah.
way around, mistake of the intellect,
Sure.
you eat the wrong foods. So when I was looking at some of these chemicals, specifically with pharmaceuticals, I was drawing a what if flow chart.
And actually, for our viewers and listeners, when you talk about mistake of the intellect, do you want to clarify what you mean by that?
Of course.
Yeah.
So usually the root cause of that is something affecting the mind. So it could be something as simple as daily stress or stress in your
Mhm.
life that affects your reaction to things, and balancing your energy, or it could be as large as PTSD or trauma, right? So those things can affect our ability, our mind, and the balance of our mind. And once you have an effect in the mind, it can then cause people to make the choices that aren't beneficial. I'm not saying wrong choices, because just saying choices that are not beneficial to to the mind and the physiology. And so,
Mhm.
for example, if we're making choices that aren't beneficial, it could be our daily routine, staying too late at night, consuming foods that are processed or that are
Sure, sure.
incompatible with each
It's
other.
really it's really it's those it's the mistake the intellect, the power of discernment that's being not really in tune with the inner bliss, our inner consciousness, where we're totally attuned to the rhythms of nature. But there's something else, there's a disconnect with that, which causes, us to make decisions that are detrimental to us staying attuned. Does that make sense to you?
They could be, doesn't mean they are necessarily, but they could lead down that path, right?
Of course, of course.
So it
Yeah,
could
they
be,
could be little things, but they have a cumulative effect.
right. So lifestyle, daily
Hmm.
routine, sleep,
Right.
what they're eating, what they're consuming, substances, who they're around, their
Yeah.
environments. And we
Hmm.
attract the energy that we put out to the world in general. That's just basic physics. So,
Yes.
but our mind tries to make sense of these things. And there's, with, there's a, it's essentially ego. Ego is important to have intact because it prevents us from hurting ourselves. But if it's too large and it's not balanced, and we're coming from the space of ego versus coming from the space of consciousness or heart space or connection between mind and body, it
Yeah.
could affect the intellect. It could affect the choices that we make. So basically, mistake of the intellect
Of
is
course.
making choices that are not beneficial to the mind or the physiology, right?
Yes.
In a nutshell, that's what that means.
Hmm.
And how that manifests is going to differ from person to person.
Of course.
And, but here's the thing, we're all dynamic. There is no steady state. Our body tries to get to steady state, which in homeostasis, which is the inner balance in our body, right? But there's external forces, the planetary alignments, people around us, the noise that we hear on social media, or communication that we have with people, relationships, all of these things, the things, energy that we put in our body, those can have an impact on our own internal energy. And so
Of
our
course.
body's trying to go to balance, but as we are exposed to those external forces and internal forces, it can throw it off of balance. So we're never, I don't like to use, I shouldn't use the word never. It is rare that a person is in a state of complete balance. And if they are, usually it's short term. Even after we consume a meal, our body goes out of balance to process it back to balance. And it's the things that we do to maintain and mitigate the dynamicism right outside of us and within us is the key. And there's certain tools we can
Yeah.
use,
Yeah.
like
I
TM.
think. Yeah. Yeah. I think what's coming to mind when you say that, I love how you just described that, because people are under this misimpression. Yes, Ayurveda is about balance, but the reality is life is dynamic.
Yeah.
But what transcendental meditation and Ayurveda really help us with is, um, we become we're more dynamic. We're flowing with that dynamism. So if it's cold, we know what to do. If it's hot, we know what to do. And so there's the ability to be in this, it's like the ocean and the waves. We're the waves in the ocean, and it's just this beautiful dance I think you can do with Ayurveda. That it's not like And that just becomes very intuitive after a while. Has that been your experience?
Yes, and I think what you're trying to say, and just because I think some of the folks in the audience may not understand the ocean and waves analogy.
Yeah.
So the thing that I like to use, and this, please correct me if I'm wrong,
No, no,
is
there's no right or
is
wrong.
you can work with the energy or you can work
Yeah.
against the energy. There is no wrong
Yeah.
or right. I think
Right.
when we work against energy flow, it teaches us lessons, and that is
Mhm.
how we learn. We learn when we have lessons, right? When we go with the energy flow, that means we've potentially learned that lesson, or we understand when there's a dynamic challenge. I use dynamic in multiple ways here because there's dynamic means movement. It's not it's not it's not uh, stationary. And so because the world is moving, because there's movement around us, we have to adapt to that. And that's how we can once you have tools such as, okay, it's cold outside, that's going to throw off one part of my body, which is maybe aggravate what we call vata, right? So we have
Mhm.
to offset that to balance that part of our body out. And it could be the time of day, it could be the season, it could be where we are traveling to, location, it could be
Mhm.
something else that's stimulating that, like our physical makeup, our prakriti, that we might be prone to that already. So those are the things Ayurveda helps us to understand those aspects to make adjustments and work with the flow, I think is what you're saying. And through consciousness-based approach where you're able to connect deeper into the mind body and your from your heart space, right? Then that helps provide that stability within that dynamicism. The other analogy I
Yeah.
like to
Yeah,
use in
that's a great point. You have this the transcendental meditation in terms of um, it, you start there's a stabilization that starts to occur.
yeah,
Um,
the other analogy I like to use in regards to TM, for people so they understand, why are you doing this? Is let's
sure.
pretend there's two vehicles, two automobiles, right? One
Mhm.
has shocks, the other one doesn't. They're both
Okay,
asked,
that's great. I haven't heard that one.
they're both asked to go over the same bump, which is pretty steep. The car with the shocks is the TM, the transcendental meditator, transcendental meditation meditator. The one without the
Yep,
shocks is the one who doesn't have meditation. And they go
right.
over the same bump, but they have very different experiences as to how that feels to go over that bump.
Yeah. Now, is that something, do you mind me asking, is that something that you heard or did you conceive of that? Because I haven't
That's
heard that one.
that is me. I mean,
Oh,
that
that's
that
great.
is,
That's great.
well, that isn't me. That
That's just
is
like what you said about the
energy.
doctor,
That is my
physician, Western medicine.
connection. That is my connection to the divine and information I got from
That's great. Well, I know
yeah,
we
inner
want to
knowing.
try to I want to try to be respectful of your time. I'd like to
Sure.
turn a little bit to um, thank you for sharing both your experience with transcendental meditation and Maharishi Ayurveda. Really appreciate that. Valuable information, and I'm sure it will resonate with many viewers and listeners. So thank you, Kristen, for that so
You're
much.
welcome.
You are bringing Ayurveda into the world. You're working with holistic practitioners, or my understanding is you're involved with a project now. Do you want to say more about that and where you see Ayurveda in that, and in general, what you view your purpose in terms of this the current healthcare paradigm and contributing to a beneficial shift? Say just a few words, whatever you'd like to say would be great.
Okay. Hopefully I touch on those points. So the health tech startup that I have is a new healthcare model that
Mhm.
our team is proposing to the US,
Mhm.
not the government necessarily, but the US. and
Mhm.
hopefully a supplemental model that will help address some of the things that have not been working, and working with teams to be able to collaborate the care for patients and clients. And how would
Mm.
I integrate Ayurveda? Well, so Ayurveda is the oldest form of medicine. It's very effective. I do believe there's benefits with Western medicine, like the technology, the diagnostic technology, some of the innovative approaches with understanding the physiology and the data. And I think that in some cases, pharmaceuticals are useful. If I have surgery, I definitely don't want to be awake. So please. And I
Sure,
think the
sure.
general intent with pharmaceuticals was to be used for short term. We've seen that
Mhm.
change over the years. So I think combining those worlds, not only with that, but also with psychology, with life coaching, with financial coaching, we know that many people struggle with their connection to money, right? It's another form of energy. So
Sure.
dentistry, um, pharmacists. I've spoken to many pharmacists, and I'm a toxicologist. We both understand the use of pharmaceuticals and the actual mechanism and the short-term and long-term effects. They can potentially bridge the gap of knowledge in real time to doctors. They
Hmm.
would help bridge that gap of knowledge, not only for them, but understanding drug herb interaction and herb interaction. I think that as a practitioner, we know in general what they can do, but having that collaborative approach would help to bridge the gap, and it would streamline the healing, reduce healthcare cost. Would potentially be a funding mechanism outside of insurance that would help
Mm.
support holistic providers that do not fall under insurance model. So this is a
Mm.
really outside the box approach. That's one way of bringing Ayurveda in, because Ayurveda would be a heavily focused modality, healing modality or option for people to work with. The other aspect is I had a protocol that whether it's accidentally came across or being in tune and in touch with my body with what it physically needed. And that's how I removed the root cause, which caused the fibromyalgia with myself. And after I've interviewed many fibromyalgia patients and clients, there were similarities in the aspects of our root cause. And so now of what I know about Ayurveda is I'm developing a team consisting of multiple types of practitioners or providers, Ayurveda being one of them, to streamline a protocol for fibromyalgia patients using what I did, but getting perspectives from them. And that would be used not only for Ayurveda, for fibromyalgia, but for most imbalances with people. And then there's two technologies I'm working on, um, that I have folks that are coming into the fold to help me with. One of them helps to heal without the use of pharmaceuticals. And the other one is for communication, to enhance communication with people who struggle with verbally communicating. And so Ayurveda wouldn't necessarily be a part of the communication. Well, actually, um, it might on a, how do I say this? Indirectly.
Sure. Well, wow, I love that what you just said about communication, because in fact, in some ways it's applying consciousness, so there's a course right now, applied consciousness, where
Yeah.
Dr. Tony Nader is bringing the language up to the modern into modernity, in terms of shifting habits. What's your purpose? Relationships, communication. So it actually could be very much related, not necessarily Ayurveda from the perspective of, when we look at, people, it's very much a personalized approach to the person, individualized approach. So if I'm speaking with a person who's mostly a Vata Prakriti or somebody who's Kapha, there's going to be a very different approach there. So it
Mm,
definitely could give us it could definitely provide some insight as well. But that's great. That's awesome. Well, it
yeah,
sounds like you have a very full plate.
yeah, I do.
Okay, awesome.
But it's not just me. This is a community approach.
Yeah, well, you have experience in terms of managing teams and working with teams and collaborating and leading teams. So it sounds awesome, Kristen. Thank you.
Sure.
Is are We're going to wrap up. Any final words that you'd like to share with listeners and viewers?
In regards to Ayurveda,
Anything whatsoever.
hmm, I would say dare greatly. If you have an idea,
Awesome.
bring it to the forefront. Now more than ever in the world, we are going to see decentralizing of many aspects of our life. That
Mhm.
includes uh, financial, that includes medical care, that includes the support for medical care financially, that includes teams, how you run a company. We look at the structure of many companies and you typically have a CEO kind of running the show. I think we're going to start seeing a difference of that. I think we're going to start to see more community-based approach to running businesses, to running most systems in the world. I see a huge shift or feel a huge shift next year in our insurance models, the way that they exist, and our healthcare models. And I think in the next 5 years, we're going to see technology we never thought would exist. And this is not talking about AI. I know that's a big topic. I think this goes deeper than that. I think that people will finally start to trust their intuition and expand on consciousness, creativity instead of the stuckness of linear approaches that we've seen in the Western world, technologies that have existed for hundreds of years will start to resurface. And this is exactly why. And if you understand astrology at all, the planet Uranus, which is about technology and unexpected blessings to come your way, it's all about your perspective on how things are going to unfold, both personally and professionally for all. So one thing personally that when I, first of all, when I speak of anything like this, I'm always speaking to myself as well. But
Of course.
advice that I still give myself is keep your heart open and your mind open. And
Open
there's
heart, open. Love that.
unlimited possibilities of what's to unfold for all of us. And
Mm.
I do know for myself that what I am here to work on the rest of my life is bringing together a community of people to help people heal.
Mm. That's wonderful. I love that. Well, when you said dare greatly, Maharshi's an inspiration for that because my understanding is that when he heard, to go in a certain direction, he just started walking in that direction. I've heard that story. Uh,
Yeah,
so wonderful. And is there a place where viewers and listeners can find you?
sure. I do have a podcast. It
Oh,
is
okay.
called Your Health is Wealth Podcast. I have 4 episodes so far, and I'm
Your health as
recording.
well.
Yeah, Your Health is Wealth Podcast. That's the
Your health as
title.
well. Okay.
No, it's Your Health is Wealth Podcast. So it's
Oh, okay. Got
podcast
you.
is in the title,
It's part of the title.
and
Okay.
we're on
Yep.
Spotify, Apple, and Amazon, also YouTube. And
Sure. I'll include links.
there's 4 episodes so far, and 3 more are being recorded this weekend next. And
Beautiful.
yeah, and then I have a
Congrat well, congratulations on your launch into the podcast YouTube world.
thank you. And
That's great.
then the health tech startup informational page is on connect4healing.net. So it's connect, the number 4healing.net. May I share one more thing?
Absolutely.
So this is a little bit of quantum energy physics. Um, I love quantum physics and especially numbers. I look at codes and wonder how does that integrate with micromolecular biology. When I came up with the name of Connect for Healing, it came to me in a journal. I mean, it came to me in dreams, meditation, and I journaled it. This was in early 2021. So if you assign a number to each letter, so the C is the third letter of the alphabet, O is the 15th, N is the 14th. So it's connect, and then the number 4 in the middle, and then healing. You assign a number to each of those, and you add them all together. I believe it's 134. So using numerology, if you reduce that, it reduces to 8, and I'm a life path 8. So the name Connect for Healing holds the frequency of 8, which is leadership, CEO, power. In the 8th house of astrology, it's other people's money, it's investments, it's our shadow side, which is due to trauma in this lifetime, or if you believe past lives, that you're here to heal in this lifetime, physically and mentally. And so connect equals 11, healing equals 11, and the 4 in the center is 1111. So it's 11, 11, 11, 11. The 4 in the center is also 13. The 3 is mind, body, and soul. The 1 is the 1. 1 plus 3 is 4, and 4 equals connection and foundation. The connect, which equals 11, is the feminine side, which is the receptive side. The healing is the action side, which is the masculine side. So essentially, Connect for Healing represents the frequency of 8, which is unbounded unity, and the yin and yang, the feminine and masculine energy within yourself, and healing through healing your mind, body, and soul through consciousness elevation.
Wow. Wow. That is amazing.
Thank you.
And thank you for walking us through that. And the name has obviously a very profound significance. So thank you for that, Kristen. Really appreciate it. I'm
Absolutely.
glad you shared it. So, well, Kristen, thank you so much for taking the time today for being on the Healthy Peaceful podcast. And